Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Village Project. And today we have a very special guest. We have Stacy Bryant, a teacher of a number of years, but also an administrator and even an interim superintendent in the Palmdale School District. And before we get into her story, we do want to, as we always do, we want to talk about the three pillars of the Village Project so that you'll know uh, what our principles are. And you know, the first one being the solution oriented mindset, where we're seeing the change, we're being the change, and we're building the future. We focus on finding answers rather than dwelling on the problems. Unsuccessful communities tend to get stuck in negativity and blame, um, while successful communities like ourselves actively seek solutions and take responsibility for their progress. There are five parts to the solution oriented mindset. That's reframing problems as challenges. We take responsibility for the problems that we have in our community. We ask the right questions. We maintain a positive attitude, and we have a strong commitment to continuous learning. Okay. Did you want to talk on that, Nicole, before we go to the next one?
Sure. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you, Mr. Hodges. So I find with the solution-oriented mindset that, like you said, it is so easy to just get stuck in that negative cycle. And having a solution-oriented mindset just shifts our focus to finding answers and moves us in that positive direction of thinking and just keeps our thinking moving forward. I find that for me, I learn best when I can bring my problems or my questions to others within my little village or my community and just have conversations, just like sit around the table, if you will, and just try and figure out solutions because I can't do it on my own. So I love hearing what other people have and I can mix and match and create a solution oriented mindset.
And what's the other pillar?
So I want to introduce pillar number two, the power of community. And that's a huge one here for us. And I learned early on as a parent that I need a group of people that can just support me to shape and mold my child. And so this group has grown obviously over the years. And I'm so thankful for them that they've just come alongside me to help me raise my child. So here, our goal with the Village Project is to just strengthen parent disposition through community by helping them develop this positive outlook by connecting them to a supportive network. We want to provide you with shared resources. And of course, we want to foster this space where parents feel seen, they feel heard, they feel supported, and most of all, they feel equipped to go back out and be the change for their children.
I want to comment a little bit on that. I believe that in the AV, we have everything we need, and three components of power of community are sharing habits, sharing strategies, and rolling up our sleeves and going to work. So the last pillar is effective mentoring, where we're leading people by lifting heads and lighting the way. And the three components of that are real talk, no judgment for not knowing, and walking it out together. And I believe that that's a real key component, especially when we start working with parents and supporting and mentoring parents. We really need to be effective in our mentoring.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So, once again, welcome to the Village Project, where we're talking about raising successful children takes a strong community. But there really is a lot more to this community than just raising successful children. But we'll get into that later. Right now, I do want to introduce our special guest, Stacy Love Bryant. And Stacy, when we had our conversation earlier, one thing I didn't ask you about was how was your childhood? And what were some of the strategies and habits that your parents used in raising you?
Well, I think one of the biggest components of my childhood was I was 100% sure I was loved.
Mhm.
And I knew that because now in retrospect, I was loved and I was given boundaries. And I knew where my space was and I knew what would happen if I wasn't in my space. and it was very clear. And of course, I was a kid in the '60s. That would be the 1960s, and so my mom was very clear. Her most famous two words were "Go play," and so my childhood was filled with love and play. But there was discipline too, because we were pretty free to play, and we did some things that weren't safe, and sometimes weren't right.
Mhm.
For instance, my mom, my brother, and I, probably around 8 years old, were mad at each other, so we got some knives out of the kitchen and started fighting.
Ooh.
That didn't end well for us. Nobody was hurt with the knives. But when
Mhm.
my mother stood on the back porch and said, when you two are done, come on in.
Okay.
And we knew that life as we knew it that summer was over.
Mhm.
So good boundaries, lots of love, and lots of support as we grew up too. They were always there to hear what we needed to tell them and the help that we thought we needed.
Yeah. Stacy, I know that I've played pickleball with you and your brother, and I know that you guys have a tennis background as well.
Mhm.
So, from what I understand, I'm not sure if I remember this correctly, but did your father coach you in that?
No, he didn't. My dad didn't coach us. However, he was a professional, I call a professional athlete. They raced motorcycles
Okay.
and in the National American Motorcycle Association and raced professionally. And so he knew what a great competitor did to prepare because he was at the national level. And that's what we grew up with.
Mm.
So again, he generally stayed out of our business, but he would drop nuggets around. And if we were paying attention,
Mhm.
it took a while to get to pay attention, you know. But we really learned a lot, my brother and I, from my dad about competing and being
Mhm.
fair and working hard. And even if you lost, there was something to learn about that. And quite frankly, when you became number one, there was only one way to go, and that's down. So you better be at your top perfect, not perfect, but best self if you wanted to stay there. And he was a very wise man, but he didn't drop nuggets too often. But when you got one, you knew it.
Okay. I do know that you are a coach. You've coached. So I'm starting to see that in some way you kind of emulated what your father was teaching you.
Correct.
So there was always this competitiveness in the area of sports. So
Mhm.
tell us about that. How long did you coach? Were you a PE teacher or?
No, no. I started coaching right after I left high school.
Mhm.
I started coaching Palmdale High School tennis,
Okay.
girls tennis, and I've coached them and Antelope Valley College women's tennis,
Okay.
and in all 20 different tennis teams I coached over the years.
Okay.
But again, very much influenced by my dad. Positive coaching, positive feedback, building building my players up and not tearing them down. If you
Uh-huh.
didn't do something well, let's practice it and do it over and over till we can do it without thinking about it.
Mhm.
And also really um, to dress and act like we were the champions. And when we had um, a process that we went through all the time. When we were going to go play a tennis match, we dressed the same, we dressed like a team. We act
Uh-huh.
like a team, we behave like a team, we encourage everybody, and pretty soon you're going to be the champion. I have
Okay.
a I have a story to that. When I was the principal at Highland High School, one of my former tennis players was my basketball coach.
Mhm.
And is it okay if I tell the story?
Yes.
So, and this is the effect adults have on children. So, when I met this young man, he was, let's just call him Jeff. He was a ninth grader, and I was taller than him. By the time he graduated, of course, he was taller than me. But by the time we both landed at Highland High School, he was the basketball coach. And so I went out to watch us practice and watched a game. A game. We're at all the games, and they weren't playing very well, and they were frankly losing. And I said to Jeff, "What's wrong with this pitcher?" Because he knew it wasn't about winning or losing. But what's wrong with this pitcher? And he looked at his team. He goes, "I know. I'll have it fixed tomorrow." And it was a little thing. They all had separate kind of socks on, tall socks, short socks, no socks. And that just told me I had five individuals. I didn't have a team out there. I had five individuals. Next time I was out there, they looked sharp and they had a pretty darn good season as well. You don't have to win, but you act like the winner. Those people come off that bus going, "Whoa, this group's got itself together."
Yeah. You know, I have a story about that, but I wanted to ask Nicole if she had anything she wanted to chime in before I tell my story.
No, I was just that was such great advice that we could give to parents as well, that they just you pass that down to your kids that we're a team.
Hmm.
You're out there representing our family, and I want you to represent well even when I'm not present.
Right. You know, I like the part that you said, act and dress like champions, and it took me back to when I was in the marching band and how we all dressed the same and all. But the school that I went to was known for the discipline. And I remember whenever we were on our way anywhere, to a game, to a competition, we spent the first 3 minutes on the bus ride in silent bus, where everybody sat up straight, looked straight ahead, and we didn't talk. And we did that for, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes. And then on the way back, we did it again for the first 3 to 5 minutes. And then once that was over, then we all relaxed and became our playful selves. But it was that moment of discipline that reminded us of who we were and how we should carry ourselves. And
Mhm.
consequently, we had a lot of success in the
Mhm.
competition. So that discipline goes a long way on the
Mhm.
sports field. So thank you for sharing.
Right, right.
So let's get into your parenting. What we have some of the things that you told us, and I one of the things that you told me about your parenting is that you and your husband tag team in,
Mhm.
in your parenting styles. Did you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, sure. Parenting is hard. First of all, there's no manual. Well, there are books,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't hand you that book when you walk out of that hospital with those babies, and
Right.
you are on your own. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, you have a good support system around you. My mom and dad were there. My mom the baby would be crying, and my mom said, "Don't let that baby cry. Pick that baby up. They need a hug, they need a diaper change, or they need food. That's all they know. This is what you do." And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that worked for me. And so, uh, and that's a little off track, but I think a consistent messaging was one of the things that my husband and I had to agree on, and that gets tiring if you have a challenging child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in the moment. I'm dealing with my challenging child. Sometimes, and my husband's standing there rooting me on. "You got this," in his head. And then he sees me kind of poop out, and then
Yeah.
he jumps in, not to attack, but to smoothly roll into the next thing. Let's sit down and talk about this. Let's talk about what might happen if you do this or that, or a lot of talking, and that's real tough for some men,
Mm-hmm.
and quite frankly, for me, I talk too much. My husband talks not enough. So between us, we kind of get it right some of
Yeah.
the time. But one, a consistent message. And the second thing is, with that consistent messaging, is being on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
If we had girls first, and he was much stricter with the girls, and
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say, "Okay, well, we got to let them try some things out so
Mm-hmm.
that they can maybe fail while we're still in the picture
Mm-hmm.
and they're not out on their own."
Right.
So that's kind of part of it. And then his gift to me was Stacy, sometimes you got to stop talking and let them talk a little bit.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And so we somehow figured it out over the years. And even today, when we're talking to any of our children,
Uh-huh.
he'll give me the look. We now have a look, and he's got, stop.
Yeah.
And then he'll ask an open-ended question, and then we'll redirect. But then when when the kids were little and one of us started to get angry, we would have to back off, and the other one jumped in. What your mother's trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so just being a tag team and not walking out of the room while dad is trying to discipline the kid, me just walking out of the room.
Uh-huh.
No.
Yeah. Hey, can you explain to us why you think your husband was harder on the girls and you were harder on your son?
Oh,
What was
yes.
that dynamic like?
Clear. Well, because they were girls, and I think he felt like girls needed a little more protection.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, they were great girls. They were very good all the time. And so it wasn't a constant thing, but going out at night, being with the other girls, and this is before cell phones, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So not knowing right where they were and needing some of that reassurance that they're going to be okay. So I think he just wasn't sure not so much they wouldn't make good decisions, but others around them wouldn't make good decisions. Same thing with me, and I was harder on my son because I've studied child psychology, and I know the brain amygdala is not as processed at age 16,
Mm-hmm.
not as developed, and so and I had by that time when my son was 16, I had experienced. Is it okay to talk many deaths? Many.
Mm-hmm.
I was in school. I was the teacher. I had more than one student pass away
Mm-hmm.
during the school year. And so I had been to many funerals and had experienced death for teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to experience that as their teacher. It breaks your heart. And I really had that fear that if I wasn't just on my son all the time, knowing where he's going, not kind of following him around all the time, but knowing that I wouldn't be able to live through that. And I had finally later on, when he got a little bit older, shared that with him. And I think he understood, but still he was 16 or 17,
Mm-hmm.
invincible at the age. So,
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I know how that goes.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you mentioned just a few moments ago about listening more and talking less. I have the same situation with me as well. And so I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. How did you come to start to listen more and talk less with your own children?
Well, it was hard. It was very hard. Some of the times I would write down the key points I wanted to make and maybe why I wanted to make them, and or just think about it before I talked to him. So I did that. But the second thing I did um, was I had a gentleman at work. I was the principal and he was a vice principal, and I came to work one day early on, and he was older than me. He'd already gone through this with his son, and I didn't know until one day I said, "I'm going to kill my kid. I'm going to kill my son. You got to help me not do that." And he goes, "You're not going to kill him. It'll be okay." I said, "When will it be okay? Because I don't think I can make it that long."
Yep.
And so he began to mentor me. And one of the best things he said to me, which I'll never forget, was, "Stacy, he'll come back around. It'll probably be when he's about 24 or 25, but all this you're feeling will go away because his brain will be developed and he'll be a totally different person." And again, I said, "I don't think I can wait. I think I'm going to have to kill him tonight."
Mm-hmm.
But he through the whole time when I would share with him, what he was saying to me was exactly what I was going through, and he'd already been through it. And so he really saved me and probably saved my son, but he saved me. And you know what? I have to tell you this. When my son was about 22 years old, he called my husband and I. He was in his third year of law school, which, as a side note, if I'd known he was going to go to law school and he liked to argue like that, I would have enjoyed it more. But I didn't know that. So he called my husband and I and said, "Are you going to be home?" Called my husband, "Are you going to be home tonight at 5 o'clock? I need to tell you something." And as a mom, all I could think was, he's going to drop out of law school. He's flying off to Australia. I don't know, anything but what he said. So we get home, we sit down with him, and he apologizes for all of his behavior. And he said, "I don't know why I acted that way. I have no idea, but I'm so sorry." Well, by that time, I'm crying. My husband's crying. He's crying. I'm thinking, who is this kid and where did you put my son? But
So
I'm
you answered my question of my next question was going to be, did you ever circle back around in that conversation? Clearly, yes, it just took a little bit of time, but yes, you guys were able to circle around back to those conversations. So that's amazing.
It was amazing. And when he left to go back to law school, I looked at my husband and said, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I sure like whoever this kid is.
Yeah.
But, and you know what? Today, he's 34 years old. Same guy. So I'm glad I didn't kill him.
Yeah, we are too. You were able to get mentored by someone, so that was amazing.
That was key,
Yeah.
very key. So,
As you were sharing about that, I was thinking that how great would it be if a lot of the parents that we deal with that are struggling with their students had a similar type support system. Someone just to let them know, no, you're not going to kill them. Everything's going to be okay. And a place where they can feel safe about venting the issues that they're having with their children. Wouldn't that be nice if our parents had that?
oh, that'd be awesome.
Yes. So one of the things you said is that you use I messages and you messages when you were
Mhm.
talking to your kids. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, my hope is that I did it even more than I think I did.
Mhm.
But especially with my challenging child, I would say, I feel scared. I am worried when you do X, Y, and Z. I need help with that. I need, and we would just talk it out. But mom, I'm just going out with the guys and we're going wherever. Yes. However, I worry that when you're on your way home, you're not going to make the best decisions, or I worry. So it wasn't always about me, but it was about me. But then I would say, to help me feel better about this, I need to know what time you're coming home. And I, as you all know, go to bed at 9 o'clock because I get up at dark 30 to go to work. So that's why I need it, because son, I am not going to go to sleep until you're in your bed. And it doesn't have anything to do if I trust you or not. It's about me.
Yeah.
And so, and then there were tougher times where we had more difficult conversations. And I would say things like, I need to know who you're with. I need to know what you're going to be doing. I need it as much as you don't think you need it. Because if you get in a car crash on the way home, what you just want me to get up at 4:30 in the morning, go to the gym, and then go, oh, well, where is Zane? Is where is he at? And so, so we went back and forth with that.
You know what I love about that, Stacy, is that you're not focusing on the child, making them feel like they're not trusted. So they walk out of the house, but they're thinking about what you are concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And they know to be concerned about mom. I
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure I'm doing this right because mom is feeling this way. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
I'm no good and they don't trust me. And it kind of puts the onus on them to be a little bit considerate about you, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I just think that's a great strategy. Yeah.
And I also think too, you can't say I love you too much, especially to a young man, because I'm modeling to him what I'd like him to do for his future wife. And
Mhm.
so I say, I love you. And I know you don't like to hug me, but I'm going to hug you because I need that. And so those kinds of things. And now today, I get phone calls from him just to
Mhm.
say, how are you, Mom?
Mhm.
Do you think I ever thought that was going to happen? No. But because I tried to stay positive, was this 100% of the time? No. We had our moments where it didn't go well. But as I grew in my parenting skills and was sure that I wanted him to learn how to parent as well, I got a little better and a little better.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting because it leads right into you asking your kiddos, what are you feeling? And a lot of times you talked about how you would just sit and you would just listen. What age would you recommend starting that specific strategy or habit with kids?
Well, as soon as you can, as soon as they can sit still for it. But sometimes the sitting still was in the car and we're going somewhere so they can't escape. It wasn't come in and talk to mom as often as you might think. It was many times we were in the car and we have these deep conversations because they're not looking right at you and I'm not looking right at them, so we can have those moments more. But as early as you can, and making those moments, I, I I used to walk around the block
Mhm.
with my daughter who needed more one-on-one time. The middle child needed more than the older one and the younger, different kind of time. And so we would take a walk and I'd have to force myself to ask questions and keep my mouth shut and wait for the answer.
Mhm.
But we got a lot of good feelings out and a lot of um, emotions out at that time. And then I could be real with them and say, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Let's take a walk. Whenever you want to take a walk, I'm ready to take a walk so that
And
you can,
I was just
yeah,
saying, I think that you just mentioned some amazing strategies within the strategies is, you spent time with your kids and you recognize that each one of your kids needed something different. And when you realize that, you went out and you spent time, whether it was walking or that in the car, you're able to have that time and it wasn't that you guys were looking at each other, but it's okay. That allowed for maybe some deeper conversations because you weren't feeling so emotionally distracted with facial features or what have you. So you could kind of be a little more vulnerable. And
yeah,
I like that. Thank you so much.
yeah, yeah. Well, you're welcome. It was a lot of hit and miss too, but so my advice to parents would be don't give up. Not like you can return that television set or television. That tells you how old I am. But you can't go return the lemon car. You got this kid, and you only get one time with them, one little short life span with them. So got to make the most of it.
Yeah.
And then you talked about several times you've mentioned how you've allowed your son to fail. Um, is there a specific time that you'd be willing to share with us about a time that he failed or you allowed him to fail?
Well, Mike, which story was that? Do you have that?
Oh,
Which
goodness.
story do you want to hear?
Well, we'll let you choose.
Yeah, I was just gonna
But
Okay.
say you get to write this one down.
I could tell you the one that I kind of really learned a lot from was the one that where you took them to soccer the next day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, I love that story. He probably doesn't love it quite as much as I love it, but he will love it when his children are older. I don't know if he'll ever share it, but he um he went out on a Friday night with a bunch of friends and came home drunk. Well, um, he came home and he wasn't feeling well and he started vomiting. And I wasn't feeling very sympathetic about it. My husband was feeling a little more sympathetic about it. And so I let my husband deal with it because I was pretty angry. So I stepped out and didn't address him. I said, I'll address you. We'll address this in the morning. You just need to go to sleep right now because you're not feeling good. And my husband stayed up with him for a little while till he stopped vomiting. The next morning, we had a soccer game to go to, and it started at 8 o'clock, and the coach needed them quite a bit earlier than that because I think their game was starting at 8. So I went in and got him up. He said, Mom, I can't go. I'm sick. I don't feel well. I go, you're going. You made a commitment to this team, and you're going to go play soccer this morning. They're waiting for you. They're counting on you. And that goes against everything that I think, at least at that point, I think I should be restricting him, keeping him home all week, can't go anywhere. But I thought, no, today's going to be about 100 degrees. This would be a great day to not feel well and play soccer. I didn't say that to him. I just said, get up, we're going. So he drags himself up. We get over to the soccer field, and there's the mom with the child, her son, who brought my son home and dropped him off safely. So I walked right up to that mom and said, Mrs. Smith, I just want to thank you and your son for your son thought it all through and brought my son home safe. But he was drunk. So I look at the kid and I said, and I'm not going to ask you if you've been drinking, but I hope you haven't been drinking. But here's what I want you to know. No matter what, you have my phone number, and wherever you are, I don't care where you're at, you call me and we will come and get you home safely, no matter what. And Mom, thank you. You've got a great kid who brought my son home safely. So I thank you very much. In the background, my son is having a heart attack. Oh, Mom, why do you have to tell people this stuff? I go, oh, it's okay. I'm just thanking her and your friend for bringing you home safely. The whole rest of the day, he's out there not feeling good, playing soccer, feeling like he's going to throw up again. I'm just thinking, thank you, Jesus, for the 100-degree weather. Mm-hmm. I don't have to discipline him. He got disciplined all dang day out there.
Yeah.
So I call that disciplining with love and logic.
Right.
Use what you have in front of you. I'm not the bad guy, man. You made this commitment. I'm just bringing you over here, rooting you on.
Yeah. That's, that really was brilliant on your part. And I don't know if you learned that from the book or if that was just instinctive, but you allow the consequences to teach him. Mm-hmm. And I know it was tempting to punish him. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times parents, that's where they fall short. They punish their kid is upset, but their kid is not really learning from what they did. And when you allow a kid to be taught by the consequences, I think it's a whole lot more effective. And that was such a great story of that,
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm not sure where I got it either, but I know at the time I was pretty angry. I needed to step out. And that might have been what gave me the moment to think about what can I do, because he's 16, 17. What can I do to really make him punish him? Yeah. Well, there's nothing you can do to a 16 or 17-year-old. They're just it's gonna roll off their back.
So, real quick question on that. Do you think he learned from that? Did you see results from that?
Well, he didn't come home drunk again.
Okay.
I'm not sure what happened in college, mm-hmm. but I wasn't living with him at that time. But you know what? He knew I cared and loved him. He knew that that I was disappointed. But whatever, we make commitments, and we're going to keep our commitments no matter what. And he didn't do it again. So
I don't think you're done telling stories, Stacy. I noticed this last point that you made that I got from you was trust but verify.
Oh yes.
So I feel like
one more story. So same challenging kid. He asked if he could go to his best friend's brother's birthday party. Well, sure. He's the best friend's brother's an older brother, super nice kid. His best friend, super nice kid. Mom's wonderful. Everybody's great. Yes, go to this party or go to this birthday party. And I'm thinking to myself, though, after he leaves, the older brother's 2 or 3 years older. My son was, I don't know, probably in 9th grade, and he was 12th grade. What are they doing with 9th graders there? older brothers don't want ninth graders. But you start thinking, all right, well, I'm going to go check this party out. Just going to drive by to make sure my son showed up. Well, I get there and there's no party. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I go up the door, knock on the door. Mom answers the door. And I said, is Zane here? Oh, oops, I keep saying his name. Zane here? She said, no, he's not. I said, well, can I talk to your son for a second? She goes, yeah. So he comes to the door and I said, hey, where is he? I don't know. I said, well, he's supposed to be over here at your brother's birthday party. And he thinks, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. I go, you're not in trouble, but this is the deal. I need to know where he's at. And you know all his friends, and you will call him. And you probably actually know where he's at. So I need you to do that for me. Call. And you can tell him that if I don't hear from him pretty soon, I'm going to go right over. I'm going to start calling his friends because I have another way to get those phone numbers. And this young man knew those ways. So next thing you know, he's on the phone, calling. He locates him, and we get him home. And then, we do our thing as parents. And it's really, you really have to have a lot of time to do that. And you have to really be calm. And again, my question is always, so you weren't where you said you were going to be. And yet, well, Mom, why'd you have to go check on it? Hey, this is what parents do, man. I said, if you'd have been there, I'd have driven right on by, come home, maybe gone to dinner with Dad. We would have had a grand old time. But you weren't there. So I've spent the last couple of hours calling your friends. As he goes in, it's a whole complicated story. But the bottom line is, my thing to parents is trust but verify. Every once in a while, you got to check on them, because my question to my son is, again, what time do you want me to start looking for you? If I thought you were over at your best friend's house and you're not home and I'm over there looking, but you're over in a ditch over the other place, when do you want me to start looking for you, and where should I look?
Yes.
So that's my question to him. Help me help you. Right. Mom, nothing's going to happen. Well, again, son, I've been to a lot of kid funerals, and these weren't bad kids. Mm-hmm. These were good kids. And really, I don't know too many bad kids in high school. They're all great kids. Mm-hmm. They make sometimes bad choices.
Yeah.
So,
when I was listening to you go through that thought process of, wait a minute, he's going to this party. There's older kids. They don't usually like, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a mother's intuition. Only a mother's intuition would have her go through all of that thinking to figure out he's not, or maybe he's not where he says he is.
Yes. And that's right. And interestingly enough, my husband and I, we were at different places. He'd go, no, don't go. Why are you doing that? He'll be fine. Another man, and no offense to men, because I love men, but they don't go where moms go. Mm-hmm. I go right to what happens if, and how, and I go into mother mode. Mm-hmm. And I've been a high school principal. So when you've been a high school principal, you've seen, I've seen kids make mistakes a lot. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if do you have time for one other story that I didn't tell you, or do you have somewhere else to go?
I'm good.
You good?
How are you doing, Nicole?
We're okay.
Okay.
So the first year I was a principal, the first year I was at the school I ended up being a principal. I was an assistant principal at that time. It was a minimum day for kids, and a group of kids got in a car and wanted to go a place to just kind of hang out. There's a creek but it's a Bouquet Canyon, very windy road. We had back to school night or whatever it was that night. The next morning we're at school and we find out a bunch of kids packed their car full of kids, some in the trunk, and they go up OK Canyon and they drive off the road. One is paralyzed for the rest of his life. Another kid died and made some injuries with the other kids. So because I have experience, and that's just one of 100 stories I can tell you, and a lot of it happens with cars and boys driving. Girls aren't immune, but it's boys and their cars. And so I've been to those funerals, I've been to the hospitals, and so me thinking about trust but verify, and me making sure I know where you're going. It's not for you. It's for you too. I want you to be safe, son. But it's for me. I want to make sure I can go back home and say, okay, yeah, he's there. I'm good.
Yeah. So that takes us into our next section of the habits and strategies you had as a teacher and administrator. And the first thing I had here was you said you made yourself very visible in and out of the classroom or out of the office.
Yes. And I think that's good for parents too, as well. Don't let your kid just go off to soccer practice or other things. Go with them. Even if you're not the coach, spend time with them. But as an administrator, I had a school of almost 4,000 kids. And so for them to get to know who I was, I needed to be visible. And I knew that I needed to have a relationship because with 4,000 kids, you always have issues. Kids are fighting, and I'm not talking all the time. We didn't have fights all the time, but we had some gang activity enough that it had me out there. Kids make poor decisions when they're angry, and so or when they're under stress. And so I would stand at the front of the parking where parents would drop off their kids, and where kids would walk in the general entrance, and I would look the kids in the eyes and say, "Good morning." And if they were wearing Aeropostale, I would say, "Good morning, Aeropostale. Good morning, Nike. Good morning, Adidas." They were carrying their baseball bat. "Hey, you got a game today. Good luck." Oh, how was that basketball game last night? Those kinds of things. If they knew they're in ASB or whomever, I would talk to them. And if they were real shy, I would kind of walk with them and say, "How's the day going?" Just I was out there before school. I was out there after school. I was out there at lunch. The day I had to go to a meeting, kids would tell me later in the day when I would say, "How'd it go in the morning?" It was great. They didn't. I said, but they go, "Why weren't you there?" I go, "No, I was gone." They go, "No, you're never gone," because I was out so much and I was walking everywhere. If they didn't see me, they thought I was just somewhere else on campus. So being visible, talking to them. For kids who are very quiet, I would walk up to them and chat with them, ask them if they want to take a walk, find another very quiet student and say, "Hey, Stacy, this is Mike. This is Mike, my friend. He's on the basketball team." And Mike always knew, okay, Mrs. Bryant's dropping someone off for me to be a friend with. And they would do that. And so I would do that with kids. I would do that with adults. When the adults walked in, I would say, "Thanks for coming to work." And they'd look at me like, "What?" I go, "You had a choice. You could have called in." And I'd say that to the kids too. "Thanks for coming to school." I mean, I was kind of weird about it, but I had a dad once. I was shopping somewhere, and I was talking to one of my daughters, and I could hear this guy, couple of things over, couple racks over, going, "Mrs. Bryant, is that you?" And I go, "Yes." And he came up, he goes, "My son attends your school." I said, "Really?" He goes, "He tells me you know every student's name." And I said, "Well, I really don't know every student's name, but I do greet them every day." And then I said, "You can't tell him I don't know his name because that would get to the point and that word would get around." Because it's our secret. But he knew my voice because I would call home, not his home, but I would do the all call for all the parents. And when we had emergencies, when we had a lockdown, I would immediately get on and say, "Parents, there's been a lockdown. I'm here. We're safe. I'll call you in 20 minutes." Set my timer. Before 20 minutes was up, I'd be on the phone telling them what's going on. So it's that communication all the time, but not overbearing. And with the kids, I could look in their face. So the last part of the story is I was standing out in front of the school and I would yell, I would go 2 minutes before the tardy bell rings, or 1 minute. Kids would be running past me, good morning, Miss Bryant, and run to their class because our deal was not to be tardy. All that had happened. I was still out the front, and this mom comes racing in, parks. Her son gets out. You could tell they'd been arguing. He slams the door and he's walking towards me. And I stop him and I go, wait, what's going on? You didn't say goodbye to your mom. And I don't know what was going on. I still don't know what's going on. I go, but you have to turn around right now. I will give you a pass. Go back and give your mom a kiss and tell her you love her. He kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? But he does it because I have a relationship with him. At least he thinks I have a relationship with him. And I do because I love on all the kids. Big love on the
Yes.
kids. He goes back to the car, leans in, gives her a kiss, probably says, I love you. And he starts walking to me. That mom turns and looks at me, and there are tears streaming down her face. So I thought, well, now I gotta go fix this and make sure she's okay. So I walk out there, and she said, Mrs. Bryant, thank you so much for that. I said, well, I know that you're not going to have a good day with the way you started this out, and he's not going to have a good day either. He can't learn if he's thinking about you, and you can't go to work and do well there if he's thinking about you. And she, just crying. How did I know to do that? I didn't know. I just was a mom. At that moment, I wasn't the principal. I was a mom. And of course, I've had that experience too. And so I always assume this is the last time I'm going to see you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure the last time you see me, you hear the words, I love you, and you know that.
Yes.
I think in parenting, the same thing. Yes. Did my kids walk out sometimes we weren't in a good place? Yes. One time it happened and I got in my car. Some other things happened, too long of a story. But I got in my car and went to my child's school, walked right on campus, which wasn't a good thing. But I walked right on campus and I didn't know where they hung out, but I started asking people. And the next thing you know, I found that child and said what I said. But I didn't let it get by me because I didn't there were other things going on than just that. But when your mom instinct or your dad instinct is saying follow up, do something, do it. And I found when I did it, it made everything better for everybody involved. Yeah.
And so a big thing that I heard you talk about there is relationships, relationships, relationships. That is key and so important. It's just building those relationships. If you could think of just one tip that you could share to encourage others to build relationships, what could that one tip be?
Well, I think there's 5 of them, but the one tip is hold on to them. And I mean, in everything. They're mad. They're going to the room. They're slamming their door. Hold on. They're going to school mad. Hold on. Just hold on. Because in teenage years, especially in high school, this is what I tell every freshman parent. Your kids right now are shoving you away. And you're questioning yourself saying, maybe it's time I give them a little more breathing room. The answer is no. In high school, they need you more than ever. There's the mean girls, there's the guys that ignore you or say things because they don't know what to say. They're saying the rude things as a guy. I mean, I've heard it all. Parents do not let go. And you don't have to talk all the time. When you pick them up from school, you don't have to say, how was your day? You just read the mood, let them power down a little bit. I had to practice that a lot. Power down a little bit. And then you say, whatever you say to get the conversation going, and that's different for every family. But I might say, you look a little sad today. What happened? You want to share anything? And sometimes it was no, and they weren't ready. And sometimes it was the waterworks. And while I'm on all that, one thing I would say to parents, first of all, your child doesn't need a phone because phones cause problems. You don't need a phone. And second, if you think they need a phone, they also need you to monitor what's going on. You need to read all their social media, and because mean girls are mean. I'm not saying guys aren't mean either, but mean girls are mean. And there's a lot going on in social media, and if you're not monitoring it, who is? That's the first on the phone. The second thing is you own the phone, so take it away from them when you need to take it away from them, and get a lockbox or whatever you need to secure it.
So those are like some two very, very good suggestions that you literally just led us into. Like, how can struggling parents, what suggestions would you give? And I think that I love that. I love the fact that you said you don't always have to ask them, how was their day? There are other questions that you can address after you read the situation, you read the room, or the car or whatever, wherever you're at. And then, of course, monitor them, let them know that you're in their space, let them know that you care about them, because a lot of times we think we need to back away and give them their space, and you're finding that no, they need you more now. They're not going to tell you that because they are trying to find their space. But I love that you said no, be there, be present, give them that safe space to explore their emotions. So I think those were two very helpful suggestions for parents who might be struggling in this area. So thank you so much for sharing those.
Well, do you have time for the car story, Mike?
Sure.
Okay, good, sure. Well, back on that, the space, giving your child space, and knowing discipline, how much discipline. And when they're disciplined at school, when they're being disciplined there. As a former administrator and school teacher, I have found many parents who have a child who has done something that causes them to go into the office, and the parent is called in, that the parent immediately could never see their beautiful child doing something this wrong, whatever this is. And the fact of the matter is, even good kids make bad choices. So it's not an indictment on how bad your kid is. It's today, your child did this, and this is the consequence of it. No emotion. I still love your kid, even if I'm suspending them for 5 days, even if I'm expelling them. I still love your kid, because better you get in trouble here with me than out there with the police officer that has one tool, writing you a ticket. So they're not out there to coach anybody. They're taking care of business. Here, I'm helping you. So one instance that's really tragic, I had a young man who was driving his car recklessly in the parking lot at the high school. And a vice principal warned him, then told him he had to park outside of the school boundaries. Then he was doing the same thing out there. So our school deputy had to go out and give him a ticket. And then he was forbidden to ever drive back to school again, because he was going to harm himself or hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
There were a lot of kids at my school. The dad, and so he got a ticket. The dad comes screaming around and into my office, telling me that I cannot suspend his child. I can't tell him he can't drive on campus. You know, all the rhetoric that a parent comes in. They were on high alert, and they were just as wound up as they could get. So I decided to listen and not get upset, which is the best tactic to use in any situation. And I said, well, at some point, your son is going to kill himself or kill somebody else, and then that will be your fault because you didn't parent. I'm telling you right now, he is unsafe. So much so we had to suspend him. And that is a big deal to me. We don't suspend kids unless it's a big deal. Someone's going to get hurt or you're going to harm yourself. And so the dad had calmed down and he said, well, what can I do? Well, I said, you be the parent. Is that your car? He goes, yeah. I said, well, it's your car. Take the key and say, we have to earn this back. And how do we earn this back? We go on drives together. We practice some more, but you don't just continue to give him the keys because and I said it more than once, probably 3 or 4 times, he is going to kill himself or somebody else. 6 weeks later, my challenging child wakes up in the morning and comes to report to me that a couple of kids were killed in a car crash. And I think they're your kids, Mom. And it was the day my son turned 16, by the way. So I find out that this dad that I talked to 6 weeks prior, telling him how to parent his child, another child, 2 boys in the front seat, juniors, 2 girls in the back seat, an 8th grader and a 9th grader. Let me know why they were out at midnight. That's the other thing I'd be asking those parents. But they were driving across a street, a busy street, but it's almost 12:30 a.m. Some poor guy driving home from work, driving down this street in this big old truck, broadsides them because they were playing no cop, no stop. They were going across. He hits them. 2 of them die. The passenger side in the front seat and the passenger side in the back seat. That was the 8th grader and the junior. So who's the murderer now? In my book, it's the dad who didn't take those keys away. I never saw the 8th grader never made it to my school. And the 9th grader, I might have those backwards. And the 9th grader, yeah, the 9th grader was seriously injured. I don't think that girl ever made it back to my school either. But my point is this: be a parent. Yeah. Be brave enough to love your kid enough to do the right thing all the time. Because they're real good at touching our emotion, making us feel like we're being too rough. Everybody else's kid does that. Everybody else. My answer is, I'm not everybody else's mother. I'm your mother.
I don't think it could have been said any better. Be a parent.
Be a parent.
You know. And so we're going to wrap it up on that. I think you shared a wealth of information. And
yes, thank you, Stacy.
Some of these strategies I'm going to be sharing online because that's what we do with the Village Project. We share strategies and we share habits. And so we just thank you for sharing, Stacy. I appreciate you being on our show. And,
you're welcome.
You know, Nicole, did you want to say anything before we
No,
wrap up?
I was just so thankful for all the wonderful tips that you gave and all the strategies. You interwove so many different things and you hit on so many different pillars that we talked about at the beginning with the mentoring and just having a community and finding solutions together. And I just want, parents and teachers to know that we're here. We've got strategies and we can't wait to hear different stories from different people as well so we can continue to grow our community and send out lots of positive solutions to these problems that we're facing here in the AV.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing you talked about was the mothering. And there's a lot of parents out there that need that type of mothering. And so that's what we aim to provide at the Village Project. So we just thank you so much, Stacy, for sharing. And I know that you will always be a resource that we can count on, even when we start to mentor parents, to get ideas.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that.
Yes.
I have all the faith in the world in you guys. It's a big need, a huge need.
All right. Well, thank you for doing
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.